Hey everyone, today we're going to be replacing the factory stereo in the 2007 4Runner. We're going to replace this with this. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around and we'll show you how to do it. Okay, so let's get started. First thing that we're gonna do is we're going to lift this console and pull this up. So this comes apart, and there will be, in our 4Runner, there are 3 switches here that need to be unplugged. So for the downhill control, there's a tab right there. You just unplug that. Okay, so on the seat heaters, each of these 3 cords need to be pulled out. And you'll just want to remember the order. So it's pink, black, and blue from top to bottom. And then the final thing that we'll need to get unplugged is the cigarette lighter. Now that we have that out, to remove this trim, and this comes out by just lifting this up. Under here, this just pulls out. You would just pull it up and out. And now under here, right there, is a 10mm bolt that you need to take out. Just pull out on your air conditioner unit, and behind here will be a wiring harness that needs to get unplugged. There's a tab on the bottom that you need to push, and now there's these 2 10mm bolts here. Oh, and I forgot to mention at the beginning that you'll want to remove the negative battery cable to keep anything from shorting out or the airbag accidentally deploying or something like that. Now that those 2 bolts are removed, this will mostly be free, but you'll want to unplug. There's a plug behind here. It's actually easier to pop it out sometimes. To hit this tab and unplug it. And you can just pop it right back in. You'll want to do the same thing on this side. On ours, the 4-wheel drive is also, there's also a wiring harness plugged into that. So you'll need to find the tab on that to pull it out. That one's a little tricky because the tab is kind of underneath this metal, or not metal, but this plastic bar, so you kind of have to find that. And then once that's unplugged, it's easier to pull this out. And so same deal here. So now there's a bolt under this piece right here that we need to get to. In order to get to this one, there is a 10mm bolt, so you need to remove that. Okay, and then now that that's removed, you can just pop that out, and notice this ring popped out at the same time, which is what you want. And so now, if you can see right here is another 10mm bolt. I'm just going to go ahead and pull this down just a tiny bit. Make that a little easier. Okay, so after you take this bolt out, there's another bolt. Now once you have all those bolts out, you should just be able to gently pull this plastic, and notice these tabs down here will need to be kind of lifted up and around a little bit to maneuver this whole plastic piece out. But just be gentle with it, not to break anything, and it will eventually come out. Okay, so I've already taken these two bolts out, but there's one bolt here, one bolt here. The last two that are holding this in, those need to come out. Okay, now you should just be able to slide this out. And then there's your factory harnesses. So you want to unplug these. Again, each of these will have a tab on the bottom. All right. Now let's go put the new one in. Okay, so here's the factory radio and here's the new radio we're putting in. And we'll need to remove these brackets and put them on here. And then we are going to add this trim kit to it. I'll put a link to where I got this in the description. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, and so there's two raised points right there that will fit in here to where you can use this hole and this hole. And this stereo comes with its own set of screws in here. And so now we're also going to get the left trim piece and put it on there so it all gets screwed in together at the same time. Notice this one says L, so that's the one we want to use with this one. So again, we put that down, and this is going to go something like that. So we're going to take this plastic off and screw this one in. Okay, same on this side. Find where those notches go in. And then the trim on. So that's what they should look like. Okay, so this is the wiring harness and interface that we are using. As you can see, it does the steering wheel controls. We don't have an amplifier, but it would modify that, or it would work for that as well. But I'll put the link to where I got this in the description. But this is the wiring harness that we're going to be using, and we'll show exactly what I did to this has a booklet in it, and you have to use that book and the book that comes with your stereo to line up your speakers and the power, the ground, and all of the cables and the wires, so that for the most part it's color coded, like the orange and white wire goes to the orange and white wire, but you just want to verify that you have a one-to-one match using this and then using the book from your stereo. Now that we've connected all these wires together, now we're ready to start hooking everything up. So the first thing that we're going to do is the ODB2 connector. We're going to connect that into the down here, and then run this cable up back behind the dash so we can plug it in. So let's do that first. So the OBD2 connector is down here on the driver's side, and once that's plugged in, then we want to take these wires and run them up along these other wires. And now on this connector right here, we need to unplug this and plug this in, because we don't have a navigation in this vehicle controller. We don't have this connection, so we need to make sure we give these two inputs into this wiring harness here, so that we have this connected for the parking brake connection. Okay, so now what we do here with these vehicle connectors is we connect the ones that we have. Like I said, we don't have this one, but we do have this one. This connector here. We have these. This connector goes to the stereo. This connector goes for the steering wheel controls. And then we'll also hook in the antenna. We won't use this other antenna, but just this one. Okay, so here's our stereo. This goes here. This goes here. And then like I said, once we get closer, we'll plug this antenna in right there. Okay, so we forgot one thing. We needed to put in the microphone. So this is the microphone that came with this stereo, and this looks like, to me, it's meant to clip on your visor. We don't really like that setup, so it also came with another base that has double-sided foam 3M tape. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull that one off and add this, and we're gonna actually place ours up here in the corner, just in the corner, and stick it to the windshield. And then we're gonna run this cable down this pillar and then back around into the back of the stereo. So we're gonna use a tool here to pop these covers off. And then these are just 10mm bolts. Okay, so once these are out, this should just be held on with clips. So we get underneath it and it'll just slowly pop off here. And so really all we're looking for is just enough room to run the wire down here, so we don't have to pull it all the way out. You can see that gap. We should be able to just run the wire right down here through here. So that's really all we need to do. So let's start running the wire. Okay, so you can actually just take this whole piece out, just move it to the side, that way we have more room to work. And so now what we're gonna do is we'll go ahead and remove this tape and stick this here, and then run this wire along this wire down, just like this, right next to this wire here. We'll probably use a couple of zip ties to tie it in there. So I'm just gonna peel off the back side of the tape. Stick that right there. Now run this wire. Okay, so I've got a little bit more sturdy wire, and so I'm going to run this up from the bottom, and so then it'll show up here. We'll tape off to that and then pull this cord down through with it. So I'll show you how to do that. Basically, you want to find your spot back here that you can see through. You might have to get under the dash a bit. Okay, so now, as you can see, I've got a wire down here and a wire up here. So now all we have to do is just tape this to that. Some electrical tape, doesn't have to be fancy. Okay. Make sure this wire is tucked up here so it doesn't fall. Okay, now that we have this underneath the dash, we're going to run it along with our, you see these wires here? These are the ones that hooked up with our OBD2. We're going to run it with those wires. All right, so now we're gonna plug this in. So now that we've got our wires almost in the right spot, we're gonna go ahead and take this out and plug it into the mic right there. And so now we should be good to slide this in, slide this back in, and we're gonna tuck all these wires back up behind there. Now we need to put this cover back on. I did pull this, just so you can see this. I did pull this weather stripping down so it was a little easier to move around, but to put that back in, you just do that. And now we're going to slide this back up in here. And then you've got these two bolts, and just get screwed back in here. And then once that's done, you put your cover on them, and that completes the pillar. Put the antenna in. We're gonna kind of fit all of these cables and wires in this cavity right here. And the other thing we did is the wiring harness came with the audio video out and a USB plug. So we ran those wires down here, and we'll probably put them down here somewhere. Not quite sure yet, but we'll figure it out. So now let's remount these 10 millimeters. Before we plug everything back in and hook everything back up, notice or remember we've got this audio auxiliary, and then we have this USB. So what I want to do is, there's a gap right here, and I just want to run these cords right to here for now. Probably later on we may do something different, but for now we're just going to run them right here so they're accessible if we need to. And there's actually a gap right here, so we can just run those through. Okay, so there's those, and then the USB we've tucked back up in there. And so now when we plug our charging cord in, when we shut this, we can run this cable in the bottom, and so it's somewhat hidden. Like I said, that's where we're going to do it for now, just so we can test it and make sure it works. So let's give that a shot. Now that all this is good, let's go ahead and take this plastic off. And we're going to put this piece back in. Remember, this was a little bit of an interesting piece to get put in because of these tabs here. So first thing, let's go ahead and get our connectors plugged in. Okay, so now that we've got those in, let's very carefully run this back in here. Okay, actually, you may have caught this already, but we put these two bolts here in too soon on the bottom. So two 10 millimeters, so we need to take those out. You want to be careful when putting this trim piece in around these trim pieces, just to make sure that it fits the way you want it to. Okay. Now we can plug in our air conditioner controls. Push these into place. 10 millimeter bolt right there. Actually, I think that's the wrong bolt. This bolt right here, down here, over here. And now remember, we have two bolts here. There's one right there, needs to go in. Okay. Now, just snap that back in. This ring back in around the ignition. And then these final 2 bolts, 10 millimeters down here. Okay, so now we're gonna put this tray back in. Now this bezel here. Just make sure everything's lined up, and it should go in nice and easy. Now the last console piece. And before we put this in, we need to plug in the cigarette lighter. Plug these in for a test. So okay. So now let's try shut this door to keep the beep. All right, and so now the touchscreen should be working. Let's turn the radio on. So that is how you install the Sony stereo, replacing a factory radio in a 2007 Toyota 4Runner. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope that it helped you out. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them below in the comments. And like I said, if this video helped you, please subscribe. Thanks.